Flip is up. To quote Sarah Basket, what the flip is up, Tube Nation? To brush my teeth. My car is already outside. Feeling like I forgot everything that I needed. Woke up like—
Rachel Zegler has become a symbol of Hollywood's woke wave, but she's also the first actress to go from rising star to box office poison before ever reaching box office fame. Once praised as the next big thing, she's now watching her career collapse under the weight of her own words and attitude. Once hailed as a breakthrough talent after West Side Story, 2021, Zegler quickly went from Golden Globe winner to Hollywood's biggest headache. Spielberg called her the next Julie Andrews, but the sparkle faded fast. Since then, she's stacked flop after flop, almost as if collecting failures for a documentary called How to Ruin a Career in 5 Easy Films. Her reputation has spiraled, branded everything from narcissistic and egotistical to spoiled and unhireable. She's made it a habit to attract backlash, as if it's a form of validation. Her Disney musical tanked, her live shows were half empty, and merchandise featuring her image now gathers dust on store shelves. Even Hollywood insiders, and by that, anyone with internet access, have turned away. But her downfall wasn't just about poor performance, it was about personality. Zegler became infamous for condescending interviews where she humbly bragged about her own humility. The breaking point came with Snow White, the role that was supposed to define her Disney legacy. Instead, it became the face of her undoing. Before the film even released, she criticized the original Snow White story, calling the prince a stalker and the fairy tale weird. Mocking a beloved classic while starring in its remake was a PR disaster. Fans saw it as arrogance. Disney executives saw it as brand suicide. Her comments turned a magical role into a cultural firestorm. By 2023, Zegler wasn't trending for her talent. She was trending for her attitude. Clips of her interviews went viral for all the wrong reasons, with fans calling her the human eye roll emoji. The internet had a field day, labeling her every quote as another Zegler moment. Now, in 2025, even Disney seems to have washed its hands of her. The studio that once plastered her face on every billboard has gone silent, cutting all ties as her image fades from the spotlight. What was once a golden opportunity turned into a masterclass in self-sabotage. Rachel Zegler's story isn't just a Hollywood cautionary tale, it's a reminder that talent alone doesn't make a star. Respect, humility, and self-awareness matter too. And somewhere along the way, she lost all three. When asked to describe her version of Snow White, Rachel Zegler confidently explained, "Snow White is the girl you remember, but she's definitely made for the modern age." She spoke about themes of empowerment, individuality, and self-discovery, insisting that this new adaptation focuses on what it truly means to be the fairest of them all. According to her, this Snow White is not waiting for a prince or relying on anyone else to define her worth. Instead, she's finding her inner voice and strength to become a fair and independent ruler. On paper, that sounds admirable, a modern twist on a classic fairy tale. But to audiences who cherished the original, it came across as dismissive, even arrogant. For many, Zegler's words didn't feel like an inspiring reimagining. They felt like an actress talking down to the story that made her famous. If that caused some raised eyebrows, her next career move turned those frowns into full-blown disbelief. Rachel Zegler's highly publicized West End debut in Evita at the iconic London Palladium was meant to be her comeback moment, a chance to prove she was more than just controversy and online backlash. The Palladium is not just any theater. It's a sacred ground for performers. With 2,286 seats, a history stretching back over a century, and legends like Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice tied to its legacy. This was supposed to be Rachel's shining moment, her big, cinematic, she's still got it chapter. But instead of triumph, the reality was brutal. Night after night, the audience was sparse. Rows of red velvet seats sat untouched, glimmering under the stage lights like silent reminders of empty promises. Reports surfaced that more than 70% of the seats were vacant, not just in the early weeks, but throughout the show's entire run. From June to August 2025, Evita transformed from a prestigious event into a theatrical ghost town. The only thing echoing in the hall louder than the orchestra was the collective awkwardness of a half-empty audience trying to make sense of what they were watching. Fans on social media began posting videos from the show, capturing shaky vocals, awkward staging, and unimpressed reactions. Within days, TikTok and Twitter were flooded with clips mocking the performance, and "refund" became the unofficial slogan of the audience. People joked that Rachel's version of Evita had achieved the impossible, uniting musical theater lovers and her online critics in shared disappointment. Some even claimed that she seemed distracted, unprepared, or simply disconnected from the emotional power the role demanded. Desperate to salvage the situation, producers began slashing ticket prices. At first, the discounts were small, then drastic. Within weeks, you could get seats for as little as $2.95, less than the cost of a coffee or a Disney park hot dog. Even premium front row tickets, which should have been sold out months in advance, were gathering metaphorical dust. Scalpers abandoned ship completely. Even they couldn't flip those tickets for profit. If there was ever a sign of a full-blown theatrical flop, this was it. Still, Rachel's team tried to twist the narrative. They pushed out statements claiming Evita had racked up over $4 million in pre-sales, painting the picture of a hit production. But that illusion didn't last long. Theatergoers quickly pointed out that they could still log onto the official booking site and grab 6 seats together for a Saturday night show. Something impossible for a supposed blockbuster. Reddit threads lit up with skepticism and sarcasm, calling the PR numbers fantasy math. Comments like Evita performed to ghosts and Rachel's ego sold more than her acting became viral memes. In the end, what should have been Rachel Zegler's grand redemption arc became another chapter in her growing legacy of overconfidence and poor reception. A show that could have reminded audiences of her talent instead reminded them of how far she'd fallen. The London Palladium spotlight, once meant to showcase her brilliance, ended up exposing her flaws for the world to see. It was supposed to be one of those unforgettable theater moments, the kind that lives forever in Broadway lore. Don't Cry for Me, Argentina is a song that can bring even the coldest audience to tears. It's powerful, emotional, iconic. But in Rachel Zegler's case, it wasn't her voice that stole the spotlight, it was her balcony. Yes, her balcony. Because in the most Rachel Zegler moment imaginable, she turned what should have been her defining West End performance into something that felt more like a social experiment. Instead of taking the stage, standing under the lights, and delivering that heart-wrenching anthem to the people who had paid hundreds, even 500 or more, for premium seats, Rachel decided she'd rather sing from the balcony. Not the upper balcony of the theater, the one outside, to the street. Picture this for a second. It's a Saturday night in London. The theater's grand doors open, the spotlight shifts, and there's Rachel Zegler leaning dramatically over the Palladium balcony, belting out "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" into the night air. Not for the audience who actually paid to see her, but for random strangers wandering down the street. The people who dropped hundreds on tickets? They were still inside, staring up at a giant screen, watching their headliner perform for free to pedestrians eating ice cream and holding shopping bags. It was surreal and infuriating. The performance was meant to be a grand, emotional highlight of the show. Instead, it turned into a bizarre parody of theater itself. Fans who had come expecting a live, once-in-a-lifetime experience found themselves watching what was basically a live-streamed concert of a performer standing a block away. The backlash was immediate. Social media exploded in disbelief. Hashtags like NotBalconyGate and Refund for Me Argentina started trending within hours. Critics labeled it a masterclass in tone-deaf performance art. Others called it theater robbery with glitter. One viral post joked, "She charged people hundreds for a live show, then sang to the pigeons for free." Audiences felt duped. Journalists called it the bait and switch of the year. And the memes, endless. Someone even edited footage of her balcony performance over a clip of people sitting in an empty theater with the caption, "Meanwhile, inside." The sarcasm was brutal. But as wild as that fiasco was, it was only the warm-up act because what came next made the balcony stunt look like a minor hiccup. Then came Snow White, the film that would go down in Hollywood history as the cinematic Chernobyl of Disney's modern era. According to insider reports, Disney poured close to $600 million into the project, including production costs, marketing, and multiple rounds of reshoots. That's nearly triple what most blockbuster musicals cost, and enough money to fund 3 entire Marvel films and still have cash left over for an Avengers group therapy session. But the result? A PR disaster so large it practically glowed radioactive. The film was meant to modernize a classic fairy tale for a new generation. But instead, it alienated both old fans and new audiences. The controversies started before the movie even premiered. From Rachel's viral interviews mocking the original story to the removal of the 7 dwarfs in favor of magical creatures, every creative choice became a lightning rod for criticism. And then, when the film finally hit theaters, the results were catastrophic. Theaters were practically begging Disney to let them pull the movie early. Some didn't even wait. They quietly replaced Snow White midweek with anything else they could find. Reruns, documentaries, even nature films. One cinema owner reportedly joked, "We made more money showing a slideshow of paint drying." Attendance was so low that clips started leaking online, showing entire auditoriums completely empty. Not a few empty seats. Completely deserted. You could hear the projector whirring in the silence. One tweet summed it up perfectly. You could film a horror movie in this theater and no one would notice. And it wasn't just an American embarrassment. It went global. In Lebanon, the film wasn't just ignored. It was banned. No screenings, no imports, no distribution, a total shutdown. Disney didn't just flop at the box office, it triggered what one critic jokingly called a diplomatic exorcism. All of that would have been bad enough on its own. But to make matters worse, Disney tried to spin the narrative. Suddenly, after the box office collapse, Snow White magically became the one movie on Disney+. But fans weren't fooled. They weren't watching it out of excitement. They were hate-watching, morbidly curious to see how bad it really was. And then came the final insult. While Snow White was crumbling, Disney quietly dropped another remake, Lilo and Stitch. And within a single weekend, the live-action story of a Hawaiian girl and her blue alien dog outperformed Snow White's entire US box office run. Let that sink in. An animated character from 2002, a literal blue alien with a ukulele, made more money than Disney's $600 million Princess reboot. Fans online couldn't resist. Rachel Zegler got beaten by Stitch, one wrote. She got outperformed by a blue gremlin. Memes flooded the internet, and the humiliation was complete. It's almost poetic. The girl who once won a Golden Globe at 20, hailed as the future of Hollywood, now the center of its biggest punchline. Not because she lacked talent, but because she refused to listen. Her ambition curdled into arrogance, her confidence into condescension. And in the end, she didn't need a wicked queen or a poisoned apple to destroy her career. She did it herself. One balcony, one bad interview, and one colossal flop at a time. This isn't just one flop or a single misstep in a celebrity's career. It's a full-blown performance art piece in failure. It's the perfect storm of arrogance, ego, and delusion colliding with reality. What we're witnessing isn't just a Hollywood disaster. It's what happens when a studio pours millions into a personality rather than passion, into a brand rather than a bond with the audience. Rachel Zegler once stood confidently on stages, balconies, and red carpets, shouting to the world that she was the future of cinema, a modern icon destined to reshape the industry. And now, she's not the face of the future. She's the punchline of the present. At every premiere, every press event, she carried herself like a living masterpiece. A self-proclaimed prodigy who believed the world would line up just to witness her existence. You heard that right? Zegler didn't just think of herself as talented, she saw herself as untouchable, almost sacred. She preached her own greatness with the intensity of a motivational speaker trapped in a mirror. And yet, every time things went wrong, she doubled down, pretending everything was fine, as if her career wasn't burning down around her. It's as though she's standing in the middle of her own inferno, roasting marshmallows over the ashes of her reputation. She disrespected timeless classics, dismissed loyal fans, mocked a beloved fairy tale, and now she's surprised that no one wants to pay to see her perform it live. Let's talk about the merchandise, because when even Disney, the merchandising king of the world, can't sell you as a princess, you know the dream has officially hit rock bottom. In what can only be described as a marketing meltdown, Disney tried to spin failure into exclusivity. They launched a limited edition Snow White collection. T-shirts, mugs, dolls, tote bags, each one proudly stamped with Rachel's face, as if she were the reincarnation of Cinderella. The plan was simple: make the items scarce, fuel the hype, and let collectors fight over them like it was the early 2000s again. But that plan turned into an epic backfire. Fast forward a few months and the shelves were still packed, untouched, perfectly arranged, and collecting dust. Not one mug out of place, not one doll sold. Even the clearance bins started to look ashamed. Stores tried everything: stealth price drops, secret markdowns, 2-for-1 deals. But the demand was as dead as the buzz around the movie itself. One cashier was even caught on camera using Snow White mugs as doorstops. That's how little people cared. Fans online roasted the whole thing. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. "You can't sell woke if no one's buying." And honestly, that line might as well be carved on the tombstone of this marketing disaster. Disney tried to sell nostalgia, but all they built was a warehouse full of unsold regret. Instead of becoming a symbol of empowerment, Rachel Zegler became the face of the clearance aisle, a walking reminder that hype can't replace heart. But it didn't stop there. As the shelves stayed full and theaters emptied out, Rachel began to unravel. The pressure cracked her polished image. She started doing emotional live streams that blurred the line between genuine distress and bad acting. Viewers couldn't tell if she was crying for help or auditioning for a soap opera. The tears, the shaky voice, the dramatic pauses, it all felt staged. Interviews turned into rants, Q&As turned into lectures, and every meltdown circled back to the same excuse. The internet is mean, but no amount of tears or blame shifting could change the truth. This wasn't about hate. It was about a star who burned too bright, too fast, and refused to see that she lit the match herself. She proves, yet again, that she hasn't learned a single thing. One moment, she's playing the tragic heroine of her own story, the misunderstood martyr of the Magic Kingdom. And the next, she's telling a reporter that she's the new, bold, enlightened princess, like she's rewriting history one interview at a time. She actually bragged about being gifted very good cheekbones from God, something she claims she thanks him for constantly. When she was a kid, she says, she manifested cheekbones and dimples, and got both. That's her big miracle story. Not talent, not kindness, not ambition, just cheekbones. And then came the Instagram moment, the clip that made the internet collectively groan. She posted a video after the premiere, flowers in hand, smile trembling, voice shaking like a Wi-Fi signal during a thunderstorm. She was clearly trying to turn it into a moment of empowerment, like a resilient queen rising from the ashes vibe. But instead, fans saw it for what it was, the saddest flex of 2025. One comment went viral instantly. "She's holding flowers like it's a funeral." And honestly, that's exactly what it looked like. A funeral for her career. The red carpet didn't feel like a celebration anymore. It felt like a eulogy, complete with forced smiles and fading spotlights. There goes her shot at ever being Miss America. While other contestants talk about ending world hunger or promoting peace, Rachel's only campaign promise is cheekbones and dimples. No mention of wisdom, family, artistry, just a beauty filter made human. And the internet had a field day. Oh, the memes. They came faster than box office refunds. There's one image of her sitting alone in an empty theater, every seat around her vacant, and someone captioned it, "Snow White and the 7 empty seats." Another one read, "Box office bombshell." It was brutal, but the internet was relentless. Soon, every social platform joined the roast. TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, all turning her public unraveling into a global group project. Every time people thought they were done hearing about Rachel Zegler, she popped right back up like an unwanted sequel. There she was again, trending for all the wrong reasons. Her face splashed across timelines like a ghost that refused to move on. Except this ghost had a god complex and a sad Hallmark card. And just when everyone thought it couldn't get any more absurd, Hollywood stepped in to make things worse. A casting director, apparently drunk on nostalgia or just bad judgment, decided to offer Rachel the role of Maria in a Sound of Music remake. Yes, you heard that right. The same actress who burned Snow White to the ground was now being considered to play one of the most wholesome characters in cinema history. It was like casting a thunderstorm to play a rainbow. Meanwhile, her co-stars were already bailing out like passengers on the Titanic. Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman herself, gave one of the most graceful Hollywood backhands ever recorded. When asked about Snow White's failure, she didn't blink. She called it a corporate misalignment. Translation, not my problem. She basically said, "I showed up, said my lines, went home." And that was that. When pressed about her experience with Rachel, she dropped the most telling sentence of the year. "I'll talk about that when I feel comfortable." One line, 10,000 rumors. You don't need a PR degree to read between those words. It was a velvet-wrapped burn, subtle, classy, and absolutely devastating. And then there was Andrew Burnap, the so-called prince, or at least he was supposed to be. He didn't even show up to the premiere. No press tour, no red carpet, nothing. Just vanished. And can you blame him? Rachel had already gone on record saying that all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. And guess what? They were. She basically nuked his entire role before the movie even hit theaters. If that's not self-sabotage, it's sabotage disguised as confidence.
Apple juice. I mean, I got a coffee. Oh, it looks like that? Stop. I literally quit. Oh.
So now you've got Gal playing polite avoidance, Andrew disappearing into thin air, and Rachel performing for empty chairs like a ghost in her own castle. It's almost impressive how one actress could alienate an entire cast, an entire fan base, and still manage to act like the victim. And just when it felt like the story was over, Disney made their quietest yet loudest move of all. Without warning, they canceled the live-action Tangled reboot. No teaser, no statement, no explanation. They just erased it like it never existed. And why? Because, surprise, surprise, Rachel Zegler was rumored to play Rapunzel. Yes, Disney was about to hand her another golden-haired icon, and then thought better of it. They saw the Snow White flames and decided they didn't want to light another match. It's poetic, really. From balcony performances to box office bombs, from cheekbones to chaos, Rachel's story has become the ultimate Hollywood cautionary tale. She didn't just fall from grace. She tripped over her own ego on the way down. "I don't need your business, babe." Those were her words. Sharp, dismissive, and dripping with the kind of confidence that only exists right before the fall. But what business was she even talking about? Because behind closed doors, insiders were whispering a very different story. According to studio executives, Disney didn't even want to consider recasting her. Not because she was irreplaceable, but because they didn't want another public execution by meme. They didn't want another PR meltdown, another round of TikTok roasts where fans burned Disney dolls for fun. So instead, they did the quietest thing imaginable. They buried it. They shut Tangled down like it was a cursed relic, locked it away, and prayed no one would ever dig it up again. And that silence, that corporate hush, said more than any press release ever could. This wasn't just about Tangled. This was a signal, a billion-dollar blinking neon sign that screamed, "We're done." Disney, the studio that built its empire on squeaky clean princesses, catchy songs, and rainbow-colored dreams, finally drew the line. They looked at the burning wreckage of Snow White, the bad press, the empty theaters, the tone-deaf interviews, and said, never again. They weren't pulling back to save money. They were pulling back to save face. Because before Rachel Zegler was the internet's favorite controversy, she was a newcomer with one single IMDb credit. One. A short list so tiny it could fit on a fortune cookie. Then suddenly, she's being handed West Side Story, Snow White, The Hunger Games, legacy franchises. Crown jewels of Hollywood? It was like someone skipped 10 chapters and decided to make her the chosen one before the story even began. And who picked her for that spotlight? Spielberg himself. The man, the myth, the legend. The guy who discovered E.T., Jurassic Park, and Indiana Jones saw something in her. You'd think that endorsement alone would be untouchable. A career-long shield. But here we are, 2025, and the silence from Spielberg's camp is deafening. No quotes, no interviews, no "I'm proud of her," just crickets. It's like even he wants to pretend he never said her name. And maybe that's because somewhere along the way, the confidence became arrogance. In one viral clip, Rachel calls the Sharks, the rival gang in West Side Story, a rainbow of the Latino community. Then pauses, struggles, and stumbles over her own words when asked to actually define Latino diversity. It was awkward, painfully awkward, and critics didn't hold back. They didn't just call her bad, they labeled her a charisma experiment. Not a real star, but a corporate hypothesis. An idea cooked up by some PR team in a shiny boardroom. Can we make the audience love a name before the talent catches up? Spoiler alert, you can't. You can't fake connection. You can't skip the grind. You can't become beloved just because your marketing team says so. Even she seemed to realize it too late. During one interview, when asked about the romance in Snow White, she said with that familiar mix of smugness and oblivion, "We have a different approach. People will assume it's a love story just because we cast a guy." It was meant to sound modern. It came off as dismissive. Fans didn't hear empowerment. They heard contempt. And now, she's being compared to the patron saints of Hollywood misfires, Sam Worthington and Jai Courtney. Remember them? Studio favorites, big promises, endless potential, and then poof, gone. Swallowed by Hollywood's black hole of almost famous. That's the club Rachel's joined now. The club of we tried too hard, too fast, and nobody cared. And speaking of nobody caring, let's talk numbers. Real brutal career-defining numbers. Snow White, the movie that Disney spent years hyping, hundreds of millions funding, and mountains of marketing pushing, couldn't even cross $100 million domestically. For a Disney princess film, that's not a flop. That's a cataclysm. You practically have to try to bomb that hard. The math doesn't lie. The theaters were empty. The merch was unsold. The hype was hollow. And the actress who was once hailed as Disney's next golden girl suddenly found herself as the face of a billion-dollar failure. And yet, even after all that, she keeps talking. She told a reporter recently that every inch of her body was built to be worshipped, that her compassion has no boundaries. Statements that read like a parody of self-awareness. The kind of thing you'd expect from a satire about fame, not from someone living it in real time. The truth is, this isn't just a career misstep. It's a masterclass in overreach, a Hollywood parable about ego, hype, and what happens when talent meets entitlement. She wanted to be iconic. Instead, she became a warning. But here's where the story reaches peak embarrassment, the kind of moment that makes even Disney's most loyal defenders wince. You know what movie outperformed Snow White's entire domestic box office haul and did it in just a single weekend? Minecraft? The movie. Yeah, that pixelated, blocky fever dream that everyone thought would be a running internet joke suddenly became a monster hit. Jack Black, shouting into a microphone about pickaxes and creepers, managed to charm audiences more than Disney's so-called modern fairy tale. Why? Because Minecraft didn't lecture its viewers. It didn't try to rewrite history or turn a bedtime story into a moral thesis. It just wanted to entertain. It gave people a reason to smile, something Snow White forgot how to do. While Minecraft embraced its own silliness, Rachel's Snow White treated itself like a sermon disguised as cinema. Instead of magic, there were monologues. Instead of charm, there were lectures about empowerment. It didn't feel like a movie. It felt like an argument. And audiences didn't buy a ticket to be scolded. And when the dust settled, the numbers told the real story. Snow White's IMDb score now sits among the lowest of any Disney remake in modern history. That's lower than titles fans barely remember existed. Critics didn't just dislike it, they obliterated it. Online reviewers compared watching the film to attending a class you didn't sign up for. The backlash was so bad that Disney reportedly went into full-blown panic mode. Behind the scenes, executives tried to spin the narrative. They claimed the movie was doing incredibly well on Disney+, that millions were watching at home. But when journalists asked for the actual viewership data, the studio suddenly went quiet. No charts, no numbers, nothing. Just marketing smoke and mirrors. It was a textbook case of corporate damage control, polishing a disaster and hoping no one noticed the smell of failure. But everyone noticed. Fans noticed. Insiders noticed. The industry noticed. Insiders noticed. The industry noticed. One insider even admitted Disney went into damage containment mode, not just sweeping it under the rug, but trying to erase the whole thing from company history. They wanted it gone as if it never existed. Think about that. A company with nearly a century of iconic films was now pretending one of its own didn't happen. That's not normal. That's desperation. Meanwhile, Hollywood began its quiet retreat. Casting directors stopped calling. Not because Rachel lacked talent, but because she brought controversy, the kind no studio wants attached to their next big project. The term making the rounds in production meetings was online baggage. That's what she'd become. A liability with Wi-Fi. Too many headlines, too many debates, too much noise. Studios don't want noise. They want profits. And just like that, her once bright career entered a strange twilight. Not gone, not alive, just floating in limbo. She still shows up at red carpets, still smiles for cameras, but those smiles don't come with movie deals anymore. No lead roles, no franchise announcements, just background appearances, the kind that feel more like reminders that she used to be someone. The audience can sense it too. The energy shifted. She's no longer Hollywood's next big thing. She's the cautionary tale whispered behind closed doors. The fall happened fast. Within 2 years, she went from being hailed as the future of cinema to the actress no one wants to risk casting. And it wasn't just one mistake. It was a pattern. Every interview, every comment, every defensive soundbite pushed her further from the fans she never quite connected with. Because here's the truth. Rachel Zegler didn't get canceled. She got replaced. Quietly. Silently. Hollywood's most brutal punishment isn't outrage. It's indifference. And that's the tragedy of it all. She had everything. The platform, the power, the spotlight. But she never had the one thing you can't fake. A real connection with an audience. She skipped the grind, inherited the crown, but never earned the kingdom. And now the castle is empty, the fans have moved on, and someone else, someone who understands the balance between passion and humility, is already stepping into her place. Because at the end of the day, audiences always decide, not studios, not PR teams, not billion-dollar marketing pushes. The people in the seats, they choose who stays. And when they stop showing up, that's the true end of the fairy tale. The fairy tale.